All right, so are you ready to go deep? Today we're tackling some big history, the kind that tries to explain, the entire trajectory of human civilization across the globe.
Sounds ambitious.
It is. But, we like those big questions.
We do.
And you shared Jared Diamond's book with us, Guns, Germs, and Steel, and it all starts with this really interesting question. A guy named Yali asked Diamond.
Oh, yeah, Yali's question.
Exactly. He asked, why did history unfold so differently on different continents?
It's such a simple question, but so profound when you really think about it.
Right, like why did some societies develop, advanced technology, writing complex political systems, all that stuff?
While others remained, more traditional hunter-gatherer societies.
Exactly. So that's what we're going to explore in this deep dive. What were those root causes behind those global differences?
It's not about, inherent differences between people.
Oh, Diamond makes that very clear.
He does.
It's about something else, something much bigger.
Much bigger.
So to kick things off, Diamond takes us way back to the first human migrations.
Way, way back.
And he focuses on Australia and New Guinea.
Interesting.
And get this, those places were settled even earlier than Europe.
Wow, that's a surprise.
I know, right? You'd think that would give them a huge head start.
Yeah, you would.
But Diamond argues that a head start isn't all it's cracked up to be.
And why is that?
Well, think about it. To reach Australia, those early humans had to cross open water tens of thousands of years ago.
That's incredible. We're talking serious seafaring skills way before, boats as we know them even existed.
Right. It's mind-blowing. It's like, forget the wheel, these folks invented ocean voyages.
Yeah. But even with that ingenuity, things took a different turn in Australia compared to, say, Europe or Asia.
So what happened?
Well, Diamond points to the megafauna extinction in Australia.
Megafauna extinction?
Yeah. Imagine kangaroos, but giant, like seriously huge.
Okay, I'm picturing a prehistoric safari on steroids.
Exactly. And wombats the size of cars. These massive creatures roamed Australia, but they were wiped out.
Wiped out? What happened?
Probably a combination of climate change and human activity.
So it's kind of like a prehistoric ecological disaster.
You could say that.
But why does this megafauna extinction matter so much, like in the grand scheme of things?
Well, because those megafauna could have been potential candidates for domestication.
Oh, I see.
Imagine if Australians had, huge rideable mammals or sources of protein and milk and wool like they had in other parts of the world.
Yeah, their history could have been totally different.
Totally. It's like a key ingredient was missing from the recipe.
So it's like someone hit the reset button on societal development in Australia even before things really got going.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Now compare that to the Americas where those giant creatures, mammoths, mastodons, they died out much later.
Right, much later.
Maybe even at the hands of the first humans, they're the Clovis people.
The Clovis people are a whole other story.
They are. But so you're saying the timing of those extinctions played a huge role in how things unfolded on different continents.
Absolutely. But hold on, the story of the first Americans gets even more interesting.
Oh, how so?
What if I told you there might have been people here even before the Clovis people?
Really?
There's this whole debate about these pre-Clovis folks.
Pre-Clovis people?
Yeah. But the evidence is still pretty sketchy. It's hard to prove definitively.
It's like a never-ending detective story.
It really is, and it just shows how much we're still learning about the past.
It makes you realize that what we think we know about history is constantly evolving.
Always changing, new discoveries, new interpretations.
But getting back to Diamond's argument, it seems like it's not just about when humans arrived, but what they found when they got there.
Exactly.
Like, did they hit the environmental jackpot or get stuck with a less than ideal starter kit?
That's a great analogy. Diamond argues that once humans developed modern cognitive abilities, the brain power for complex thought and problem solving, they could adapt to pretty much any environment eventually.
It makes sense. We're a pretty adaptable species.
We are. But the real game changer was figuring out food production.
Food production.
Agriculture and domesticating animals.
Yeah, I can see how that would be a game changer.
It was just like leveling up in civilization. It led to bigger populations, permanent settlements, and the ability to store extra food.
All essential ingredients for more complex societies.
Absolutely. You can't build a pyramid if everyone's out hunting and gathering all day.
Right. But food production didn't just appear out of thin air everywhere, did it?
No, it didn't.
I mean, it's not like people in ancient Mesopotamia just woke up one day and decided to plant wheat.
Huh. No, they didn't.
So how did it happen?
It developed in certain areas and spread from there. And get this, the availability of plants and animals suitable for domestication was totally uneven across the continents.
Wait, so you're telling me some parts of the world had a better selection of tameable plants and animals than others?
Exactly. And that had huge implications for how societies developed.
That seems like a pretty big deal.
It was a huge deal.
Yeah.
Take the Fertile Crescent, for example. That area was like a domestication paradise.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of the Fertile Crescent.
They had tons of wild plants that could be easily transformed into crops: wheat, barley, lentils, peas, chickpeas, the list goes on.
It's like they won the agricultural lottery.
They did. And it's funny to think about those early farmers, right? They wouldn't have known anything about genetics or selective breeding. They just knew which plants tasted good and were easy to grow.
That's amazing. It's like they were accidentally shaping the future of food.
They were. Like those almonds we were talking about. Originally they were poisonous.
Right.
Yeah. But over time, early farmers unknowingly selected for the non-bitter edible variety, the ones we enjoy today.
That's wild. So we're all benefiting from the trial and error and good taste buds of our ancestors.
Exactly. And it wasn't just almonds. There were other plants that went through this amazing transformation: olives for oil flax, for fiber, even those plants that started as weeds but ended up as valuable crops, rye oats, even lettuce.
So our salads are a testament to accidental domestication.
You could say that.
This is blowing my mind. But what about animals? Were some easier to domesticate than others?
You bet. Diamond calls it the Anna Karenina principle.
The Anna Karenina principle. Sounds more like a Russian novel than a scientific concept.
Haha, it does, doesn't it? But it's a really useful idea.
Okay. I'm intrigued. Lay it on me. What's the Anna Karenina principle when it comes to animals?
It's the idea that all domesticable animals are alike in certain ways, while every undomesticable animal is undomesticable for its own unique reasons.
So some animals are just too picky about their food, or too aggressive, or they just refuse to breed in captivity.
Right. They're like the stubborn rebels of the animal kingdom.
Exactly. So are there any good examples of this?
Oh, yeah, tons. A perfect example is the bighorn sheep.
Bighorn sheep.
Yeah, they're similar to the ancestor of domesticated sheep, but they lack a clear dominance hierarchy.
What does that mean?
Well, you could probably tame a bighorn sheep, but you couldn't herd them like sheep. They wouldn't follow a leader.
It makes you wonder if somewhere out there someone's still trying to herd bighorn sheep.
Probably. But seriously, this whole domestication thing seems crucial. Did the ability to domesticate plants and animals vary by location, too?
That's a good question.
And the answer is yes, absolutely. And that's where geography really comes into play. Diamond points out that the east-west orientation of Eurasia was a major advantage.
Why is that?
Well, it allowed crops and animals to spread easily across similar latitudes, meaning similar climates.
This is like having a superhighway for spreading those domesticated goodies.
Exactly. But the Americas, with their north-south axis, had all sorts of different climate zones stacked on top of each other.
That makes sense.
Wow.
I mean, try taking a llama domesticated in the Andes Mountains to the warm lowlands of Central America, and you'll see the problem.
Exactly. Or imagine trying to grow corn domesticated in Mexico in the chilly regions of North America. It just wouldn't thrive.
So it sounds like Eurasia won the geographical lottery, at least when it came to food production and the spread of domesticated species.
It's a pretty compelling argument, isn't it?
It is. But remember, we've only just scratched the surface. Diamond doesn't stop there. He goes on to explore how other factors, germs, technology, even political organization, played a role in shaping the different paths societies took.
Oh, yeah, it gets even more fascinating from here.
This is already blowing my mind, and we're just getting started. I can't wait to dive into those other factors. Listeners, stick with us because things are about to get even more interesting. Okay, so those domesticated animals were like a double-edged sword, huh? Helped Eurasia get ahead, but also brought some nasty surprises along with them.
You could say that those animals, they were like ticking time bombs of germs.
Right, so all those cows and sheep were secretly harboring deadly pathogens. Talk about a betrayal.
It's not like they were doing it on purpose, but yeah, those animals, they carried a whole bunch of diseases that humans were susceptible to.
And I'm guessing this is where the germs part of guns, germs, and steel comes in.
You got it. Living in close quarters with animals meant Eurasians were constantly exposed to all these pathogens.
I mean, that makes sense, right? Like you're living with these animals, you're breathing in their air, you're coming into contact with their, their waste, all that stuff.
Exactly. And over generations, their immune systems they developed some resistance to these diseases.
So it wasn't a picnic for those early Eurasians, but it gave them an unexpected edge.
A big one. Meanwhile, other parts of the world, they were blissfully unaware of this germ warfare brewing in Eurasia.
Yeah, and then boom, Europeans start exploring and colonizing other continents, and they bring those germs along for the ride,
Right, and it had a devastating impact on populations that had no prior exposure or immunity.
like the Native Americans.
Exactly. Diseases like smallpox, measles, influenza, they just ripped through those populations.
Even before large-scale European settlement began,
Yeah,
right?
exactly. It's a tragic irony, isn't it? The
Yeah.
very animals that helped Eurasians build these powerful societies also led to the downfall of others.
It's like one of those unintended consequences of history, you know?
It really highlights how interconnected everything is. You can't just look at one factor in isolation. You have to see how it all fits together.
Absolutely. Okay, so germs were a major factor, but what about technology? Did geography play a role in the development and spread of technology too?
Absolutely. Remember that handy east-west axis that helped spread crops and animals? Well, it also facilitated the flow of ideas and innovation technology, like seeds could travel more easily across similar climates.
So it's like Eurasia had this built-in innovation network, while other continents were more isolated.
That's a great way to put it. Diamond uses the example of the wheel, which was invented in Eurasia and spread throughout the continent.
But it never really took hold in the Americas, right?
Right, maybe because they lacked the right kind of draft animals and faced those challenging north-south terrains.
Makes you wonder, what if the wheel Haiti caught on in the Americas? Would their history have unfolded differently?
It's a giant what-if game, isn't it?
It really is. Speaking of innovation, what about writing? I mean, that's a pretty fundamental technology for building complex societies, right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Writing is essential for recording information, communicating across distances, passing knowledge down through generations.
And like other technologies, it arose independently in some places and spread through a mix of copying existing systems and adapting them to new languages.
Right. It's not like everyone just started writing in the exact same way overnight.
So where did the earliest writing systems pop up?
Well, you have Mesopotamia and Mesoamerica completely independent of each other,
Wow, that's amazing.
isn't it? You have the Sumerian cuneiform script with its wedge-shaped markings on clay tablets, and then you have the Mayan glyphs in Mesoamerica, both totally unique and complex writing systems.
It's incredible that two completely different cultures on opposite sides of the world figured out this complex system of encoding language.
It really highlights the ingenuity of humans, doesn't it?
It does, but it also raises an important question. Why did writing develop in these specific places and not others?
Diamond argues that the need for writing usually arises when societies become more complex.
Makes sense. The more stuff you have to keep track of transactions, laws, historical records, the more you need a system for writing it all down.
Exactly. No more relying on your memory when you're running a vast empire. But how did writing actually spread from those early centers of invention?
Good question.
Through a mix of trade, espionage, migration, and yes, even war. Diamond brings up this fascinating example, the Phaistos disc.
The Phaistos.
Yeah, it was found on the island of Crete and dates back to around 1700 BC. It's a clay disc with stamped symbols, almost like an early form of printing.
Hold on, printing. That seems way ahead of its time.
I know, right? It suggests that even very sophisticated technologies could pop up in unexpected places. But here's the mystery. Why didn't this technology catch on more widely?
Maybe the time just wasn't right. Or maybe it was just too difficult to replicate. Who knows?
It's a reminder that technological advancement isn't always a straight line from A to B.
Okay, so we've covered germs technology, and I have a feeling we're about to delve into the world of politics. How did different societies organize themselves? Were there clear patterns, or was it just a free-for-all?
That's where we get into the evolution of social structures, from simple bands of hunter-gatherers to complex states and empires.
So from small groups to massive organized societies.
Exactly. Diamond outlines a progression from bands to tribes to chiefdoms and finally to states, with each step representing a jump in complexity and specialization.
It's like those levels in a video game. You have to master the basic skills before you can unlock the more advanced ones.
I like that analogy. As societies grow larger and more intricate, they need new ways to manage resources, settle conflicts, and maintain order.
And I'm guessing food production plays a key role in this transition.
You're right, food surpluses are crucial. When you have extra food, you can free up people to focus on things other than just producing food.
Which leads to the emergence of specialized roles, craftspeople, religious leaders, warriors, and eventually a ruling class.
Exactly, and that's where we get those infamous Kleptocrats, the ones who figure out how to skim off the top and consolidate power.
Diamond certainly doesn't shy away from using vivid language to describe those in power, does he?
He does not. But he also makes the point that this concentration of power isn't always a bad thing. It can be a way to manage large, intricate societies.
Right. Someone's got to be in charge.
Mhm.
But how do these larger societies actually come about?
Diamond argues that states often emerge from a mix of factors: competition for resources, the need to resolve conflicts, and the development of unifying ideologies, often religious in nature.
So it's not just about power-hungry individuals. There are practical reasons why people might choose to live under a more centralized authority.
Exactly. You trade some individual autonomy for the security and stability of a larger, more organized society.
It's a trade-off that is played out in countless ways throughout history.
It really has. Now, are you ready to see how these ideas play out in the real world?
You bet. Bring on those case studies. Okay, so we've talked about all these big ideas, food production, germs, technology, the rise of complex societies. But now I want to see how this all plays out in the real world.
That's what case studies are for, right? To see how these theories hold up when you look at specific cultures and their histories.
Exactly. And one that really jumped out at me was the clash between the Maori and the Moriori people in New Zealand.
Oh, yeah, that's a fascinating case study.
Seriously, talk about a culture clash.
It really highlights how differences in technology and social organization can have like a huge impact on the course of events.
So for those who haven't heard this story, give us the rundown. Who are the Maori and the Moriori?
So the Maori, they came from Polynesia. They were skilled seafarers, farmers, warriors, and when they reached New Zealand, they encountered the Moriori, who had adapted to the island's limited resources by developing a peaceful, pacifist culture.
So basically you have the Maori with all the advantages. Diamond talks about advanced technology, a more complex social structure, a history of warfare.
It's almost like a microcosm of that Eurasian advantage we talked about earlier, just on a smaller scale.
Exactly. And the outcome was pretty predictable, right?
Sadly, yes. The Maori, with their superior weapons and organization, they quickly overwhelmed the Moriori.
It's a reminder that sometimes history is written by those with the most powerful tools and the fiercest warriors.
It's a sobering thought, isn't it?
It is. But Diamond doesn't just focus on conquest. He also uses Polynesia as a sort of natural experiment to show how environment shapes societies.
Right. Polynesia is like this amazing laboratory for studying how different environments can lead to vastly different social structures.
Because you have all these islands, right? Each with its own unique set of resources and challenges.
Exactly. And Diamond shows how those environmental differences led to like a stunning diversity of societies in Polynesia.
From small hunter-gatherer bands to powerful chiefdoms.
It's incredible the variation you see across those islands.
So even within a relatively confined geographic area, you see a wide spectrum of social complexity, all driven by environmental factors.
And this diversity within Polynesia, it kind of mirrors the diversity we see across the globe, right?
It's like each island had its own unique recipe for civilization.
That's a great way to put it. And this all reinforces the idea that environment, not inherent human differences, is the key driver.
Okay, so we've seen how this plays out on islands, but what about larger landmasses like New Guinea?
New Guinea, that's an interesting one.
Because it's right next to those major centers of food production in Asia. But it seems like it followed a very different path.
It did. New Guinea is a real outlier. Despite its proximity to Southeast Asia, it remained relatively isolated for much of its history.
And they developed their own form of agriculture.
Right. Totally independent of the Fertile Crescent or China.
That's wild. You'd think with those agricultural powerhouses right next door, some of those ideas would have, spilled over.
You would, but Diamond points to a few key factors: the rugged terrain of New Guinea, its small and fragmented population, and the lack of animals suitable for domestication.
So even though they developed agriculture, they lacked some of those other key ingredients for building those really large, complex societies.
Exactly, and this is reflected in the fact that even at the time of European contact, New Guinea was still a land of small, independent villages, often at odds with each other.
So again, environment really shaping destiny.
A powerful force.
Okay. Last stop on our world tour, Australia. We haven't talked about them yet.
The land down under.
So the Aboriginal Australians, they never developed agriculture, did they?
That's right. They remained hunter-gatherers for tens of thousands of years, even though parts of the continent were suitable for farming.
And I remember reading that some people use this as like proof that Europeans were somehow inherently superior.
That's exactly the kind of thinking Diamond challenges in his book.
Because there's no evidence to suggest that Aboriginal Australians were any less intelligent or resourceful, right?
None whatsoever.
So if it wasn't a lack of ability, what was it?
Environment. Again and again, it comes back to the environment. Diamond highlights the limited number of domesticable plants in Australia, the absence of animals for plowing and transport, and those unpredictable rainfall patterns across much of the continent.
It makes you wonder, how would our understanding of history be different if we had always focused on those environmental factors rather than jumping to conclusions about, people's inherent abilities?
It's something to think about, isn't it?
It is. So they faced a different set of challenges, and they adapted brilliantly, didn't they?
Absolutely. They developed these incredibly sophisticated techniques for managing their environment, often called fire stick farming. They used controlled burns to clear land, promote new growth, create habitats for the animals they hunted.
So they were shaping the landscape to sustain their way of life.
Exactly. It's a testament to their ingenuity and their deep understanding of the environment.
It is. Okay, so after all this, after exploring all these different factors, what's the answer to Yali's question? Why did history unfold so differently on different continents?
Diamond's answer is clear. It all boils down to geographical luck, not biological destiny.
Not that some people are better than others.
Right. It's about the hand you were dealt, the environmental hand.
So the availability of domesticable plants and animals, the shapes of the continents, the spread of diseases, these were the ultimate factors that shaped the course of human history.
It really makes you think, doesn't it?
It does. It's a humbling thought that so much of human history was shaped by factors beyond our control.
But it doesn't diminish human ingenuity and resilience.
No, not at all. People all over the world have shown incredible adaptability and creativity in the face of all sorts of environmental challenges.
Diamond's work just helps us understand that bigger picture, the environmental stage upon which human history has played out.
This has been an incredible journey, this deep dive into guns, germs, and steel. We've traveled through time across continents and uncovered some truly mind-blowing insights. What's the biggest takeaway for you?
For me, it's the realization that history is far more complex than we often give it credit for. It's about looking beyond the surface and understanding those deeper, often invisible forces that have shaped the world we live in.
It's about questioning those assumptions we often make about why things are the way they are.
Exactly. And Diamond's book, it gives us this powerful framework for understanding these broad patterns, but it also leaves us with more questions to ponder.
Like what?
Well, he encourages us to consider the role of those seemingly insignificant cultural quirks, those little habits or beliefs that might seem trivial at first,
What?
but they could actually have a huge impact on a society's trajectory over time.
So it's like those little things, those random quirks of culture, could actually hold the key to understanding some of history's biggest mysteries.
It's a fascinating idea, isn't it?
It is. It's like those butterfly effect moments where a small change can set off a chain reaction that alters the course of events.
And that's what makes history so endlessly fascinating.
It's full of surprises. Well, this deep dive has been a real eye-opener. Thank you so much for sharing your expertise with us, and to all you listeners out there, thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through time and across continents. We hope you've enjoyed this deep dive into guns, germs, and steel. Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and never stop diving deep into the mysteries of the past.